Mansell, but also advance her ambitions. And so essentially what she does is she gives up her friend, who's the county prosecutor, whose name is in the book, in an effort, who had the inside track for the judge, the vacant judge seat. And so she gives her friend up to Raylan, and they're going to try and flip her to set up Mansell. And I do like just how devoid of moral direction Carolyn is, because she uses the lunch counter sit-in analogy for what she's about to do. This is just like in the civil rights era when people were getting arrested for sitting at white-only lunch counters. This is me getting on the bench because I deserve to be a judge. This is
I like the totally devoid of chemistry line that Raylan delivers to her, like when they're standing in front of the hotel,
and he's like, come on in, come inside.
Yeah, or it was like something like, oh, I want you. I forgot exactly what it was, but I'm just looking I'm thinking, oh man, they need to they needed more chemistry. I mean, we've talked about that in previous episodes, but yeah, the way he delivers the line, it's like I was rolling my eyes when I heard it. So.
There were little glimpses of moments here, right, that you started to feel like, okay, there's a little bit of chemistry between these actors now. There were little flashes of it, but it wasn't sustained at all. Yeah, and it really does feel, I mean, maybe that's the intent. Maybe I'm missing it. Maybe the intent of the writers is to make it feel very transactional or very much like a business relationship, because that's really what it feels like.
Yeah, that's exactly.
It feels like people who are, okay, well, I have a biological imperative and you have a biological imperative, so let's smush those biological imperatives together and see what happens.
Yeah.
But
I think Carolyn does show a little something as far as, she's trying to calculate exactly how she gets out.
Yeah.
And so I think that's pretty good, especially now that we know a little bit about her background and, what happened, how she was raised by Sweetie and all this other stuff. So
right. Yeah. Her dad, we find out that her dad killed himself after losing his job at one of the auto plants. It sounds like it's like a Springsteen song.
Yeah.
Last night he shot himself in the head.
Which would be on, you know what? It would make sense, right? Because this was Detroit, or if that's where they grew up, right, in Detroit, and he probably would have been around as watching the decline of Detroit and as an auto, for these automakers too.
Yeah.
So
they said it was 88, right? So when she was, rolling around with these blues musicians at 1 a.m. or whatever. It's quite the wholesome upbringing.
Yeah.
But I do like the musicians there. Guys, like the line was, man, anyone who works a straight job is a chump.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like a word.
Does it remind you of that scene in Back to the Future where the band is in the back and they're
they're smoking pot in the back of the theater?
Yeah. You guys aren't ready for this yet. I don't know what that line was.
Oh man. So all right, yeah. So let's see what else we got here with Carolyn. So Carolyn does two things in this episode. She or these two episodes to move the case forward, right? So the first is she helps with the setup of Mansell that fails in the park because he's smarter than the average bear, apparently. I think there's something else going on here we'll talk about. And then the second thing she does is help Raylan get the gun from Sweetie's boyfriend after they find Sweetie's body in the bar. And so Raylan so then it gets really weird, right? And so I think we're going to find out in the 8th episode exactly what happened here, but basically the way that the story plays out, she gives the gun to Raylan. Raylan gives the gun to Maureen, And then the next thing we see is Maureen is arresting the homeless guy who was assaulting the corpse of the lady that Mansell killed, and claiming that they found the gun in his possession and used the ballistics to match it to the shooting of the judge. And so obviously we know from this that Maureen is dirty, right? We just don't know how dirty Maureen is. And so, is it a situation where she's just trying to close the case and get a win, like Norbert kind of suggests it is? Or is her name in the book and she's now trying to, blow up the case so that she can get the book back somehow? It could be, and that's what I think is going on here. So my theory is that Maureen is in the book and when Raylan approached her with his plan for the sting, her next step was to reach out to Mansell to tell him, hey, I know you have the book. My name's in the book. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you how we're going to catch you. And in exchange, I want my name out of that book. I think that might be what happened here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because she says at the failed sting, she says someone tipped him off.
Yeah.
And so I feel like if I had to guess, she reached out to him and tipped him off. Because we know it wasn't Sweetie.
Do you think that her motivation, you laid out two possible motives for that? I think it's the first one.
Oh, you do? You think it's just to get a bust?
Yeah. I mean, well, probably not completely, but I mean, it does make sense that like she can't, if she's in the book, she can't, like she'll be exposed, right?
Right.
But if they put somebody else up, namely this Daryl, whatever his name was, it just doesn't. I mean, it's open and shut. There's not going to be any further looking into any other leads.
Right. So, yeah. It shuts it down.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that is easily explained by her arresting that guy, but it's not. No. So it doesn't so easily explain how Clement wriggled off the hook at the sting. I think that in order for us to get A and B, it has to be that Maureen's dirty and she's in the book and she's in cahoots. Because otherwise, who tipped off Mansell? Because we know it wasn't Sweetie. We know it wasn't Carolyn. The only other people who knew were Wendell, Raylan, and Maureen.
Yeah, it would have been Norbert. It wouldn't have been him.
Nope.
Because he ended up giving the gun to Raylan.
Yeah. So I figure it's got to be Maureen, and I figure we're going to get some sort of backstory there in the finale. Hopefully we have time for it. I feel like, I mean, let's talk a little bit about the meta of these two episodes. Very, very slow episode in episode 6. Not much happens until the end. Episode 7, the pace starts to pick up a little bit, but I do feel like there's an awful lot to resolve here before we can end this series, and we've got a 40-minute finale next week.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. Yeah, because usually the one thing else about this series has been like some of these episodes really drag. Yeah, like it's the other, the original series, the episodes would be a breeze. Like you go through them, and this is not like that.
No, it's not. It's not. The quality's just not there. Quiet Raylan, I think, doesn't help. He's not as kind of active or talkative as he was in the original series. Mm-hmm. He's more reactive to the people around him. So, I mean, it's an evolution of his character. He's 10, 15 years older, things change, but at the same time, part of the charm of the show is the dialogue. And I feel like we're really wanting for some of that good dialogue here. Yeah. I mean, there are some moments there where there is good dialogue, but it's almost like it's not enough. Yeah. They're in between little flashes, in between long periods of not having it. So it's unfortunate. And the other thing, I had a note here. The other thing I noticed is that they try to do, like, if you notice the music,
like sometimes it'll be like, oh, like old timey Justified.
Yeah.
and then they but like originally they tried to establish it with like Motown or like that. And
you get that little tinkly steel guitar or whatever in the background.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think that's interesting also, because it's like almost like they're not kind of sure on the direction they want to go,
Yeah. No, I agree.
So, yeah.
It's a little weird.
Yeah.
It's not a bad TV show. It's also not Justified. It doesn't feel like Justified. It also is not a great TV show either, right? It's a perfectly fine B- of a TV show, I think.
Yeah, it's solid.
Yeah.
It's solid.
Yeah. And I think that if we hadn't sort of gone down some of these weird rabbit holes early in the season, we would be in a better place now. But
yeah,
like, one of the things that I have on here is that, Willa, well, she's R.I.P. we haven't seen or heard from her in 4 episodes. It's okay, she's gone. I don't know why she was even in the show. What was the point? It didn't advance the plot. It didn't progress anything. Besides, I suppose, creating a friction between Raylan and Mansell, but you can create that in a number of ways. So,
yeah. Well.
All right. And then Carolyn, let's see what else. Oh, Mansell shows up at her place to tell her a Joker story. So I have a clip of this.
You want to know how I got these scars? My father was a drinker and a fiend.
And it just reminded me so much because he's got this story about how his mom died. And in the first one, he tells she was in a tornado. And in the second one, he tells he killed her because she was banging the oil men from the nearby county or whatever. And he tries to tell a third story to the Albanians, and they tell him silence is golden, so shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
But very much, did you know how I got these scars from the Joker? But so he tells her the story about how he killed his mom, and she kind of calls this bullshit on it. And he says, well, you don't know what could happen that way, or maybe it didn't. But, so what we see at the end of that episode, though, is that so she's turned the gun over the railing. She then sees the news story about how they arrested the homeless guy. And so I assume, this is one of those things where it's like, oh, look at that. If anybody ever talked to anyone else, we wouldn't have these misunderstandings. But I assume that what happened here was she thought Raylan betrayed her. And instead of calling him and asking him about it, she calls the Albanians. Because that's where we see her at the end. We see her with Toma telling him where to find Raylan, who's going to be meeting with Mansell at the airport Radisson.
The nicest airport Radisson bar I've ever seen.
That's right. It is the
greatest atmosphere.
Only 5-star Radisson in the continental United States in Detroit at the airport.
It's like continental level,
yes.
That level of atmosphere in a bar.
Is the sommelier. Yeah. Very nice hotel, very nice bar. So she tells the Albanians where to find Raylan and Mansell. And I have to assume that that's because she thinks Raylan screwed her over with arresting the homeless guy, right? Otherwise she wouldn't do that, I wouldn't think.
Yeah. Okay. And they didn't have he didn't have a chance to explain or anything like that. I mean, they did talk though, right? I would have thought that he would have, or she would have told or asked him.
You would think that would have been her first call. Would have been like, hey, what the hell? You told me you could trust me. Or, I mean, technically he didn't say that she could trust him. He said, if you have to ask that question, you probably can't. But whatever. People are slow learners. So, so I have to assume that she thinks he screwed her over. So, and that's why that she then turned around and betrayed him. And so, let's talk about Raylan and Mansell a little bit here. So Raylan there's one. They're at the bust. They're or the sting attempt where they're going to try and catch Mansell, and he's telling Wendell to appreciate how nice of a day it is because Wendell's got the nerves a little bit ahead of